Welcome back for more bonus audio here on This Is Wrestling. Zach McGibbon taking you through. It's a short turnaround from our last episode discussing everything about the Observer Hall of Fame, the 2025 Observer Hall of Fame ballot. We're thinking maybe it will take a little bit for Dave to kind of get through everybody's ballots, and maybe we will be coming back later in November or maybe even into December. But Dave has been able to pull off all the results within a week. And so, for our results show, of course, we have to call back in Josiah MacDonald, who is a writer for F4W Online and WrestlingObserver.com. And of course, our champion of This Is Wrestling, eager to defend his title at any moment. He might be even cashed in on at any moment. He doesn't know, but he is prepared. It is very true. Josiah MacDonald joining us here on This Is Wrestling. Thanks again for hopping on and talking about the Observer Hall of Fame.
Oh, my pleasure. And I am prepared 24/7.
Yeah.
I have not slept in months. So
do you kind of sweat when you see the black and white stripes? You're like, "Oh, that's a referee. Somebody could count a pin at any moment here."
My Uber driver earlier was wearing black and white stripes, and I nearly jumped out of the car, let me tell you.
You're like, "You're not going to roll up on me, brother. That's not happening around here."
That doesn't work for me, brother.
Man, that would have been an interesting situation if our This Is Wrestling champion was an Uber driver that was listening, a silent listener or whatever to This Is Wrestling. But nonetheless,
and somehow decided to pin me.
Yeah. He's like, "This is my moment. I've been trying to find the This Is Wrestling champion, and now here's the moment right here." But
look, at that point, I might as well just hand it over to him for the effort.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? I can't even be mad. Here's the belts. You know. Might be a bad look for the promotion of This Is Wrestling, but you do have to respect the commitment to the bit.
Well, you gotta have your Russo era booking, right?
So. Yes, WCW 2000. I guess Juggalo Championship Wrestling now will have their Vince Russo booking experience over there. So
or TNA, even when he's not there.
Yeah, or TNA. Yeah, based on this past week. We'll talk about all that on the flagship show this week, because boy, that's a lot coming out of TNA this past week, and not good on that front either.
It seems whenever TNA has like any noteworthy news, it's always TNA did something that was very TNA-like, which is never good.
Never good. But it really is the history of TNA, isn't it? Just like they always seem, even when they have some sort of positive momentum, they always find a way to squander it. It's just
shoot themselves in the foot every time.
Yeah, it's kind of impressive at this point that no matter who is the booker, there's always some way for TNA to kind of screw things up. But we're not talking about TNA today. Of course, we are talking about the results of the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame ballot for 2025, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 new inductees, 8 if you include the inductee that Dave put by himself. So we'll talk all about that here in a moment. We're going to break all that down. Who got close, who were only a few votes away in some cases for some of these people that were getting votes. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about people that are under threat to be off the ballot for next year. We'll talk about the people that did drop off the ballot. And we'll also talk about who has been added to next year's ballot. And some of these names I'm looking at right here are interesting. Some I personally don't see as interesting, and to be honest, I don't know why some of these names are being added on, but we will talk about all of that here in a moment. But first, let's get to the results of the Observer Hall of Fame in terms of the voting section. So it was the 7 that were voted in. I'm going to go down by the percentages. So the top vote getter in terms of percentages was Spiros Arion at 78%, being able to get in the rest of the world category. After that, Gran Hamada, who from Mexico, he got in at 75.2%. After that, Darrell Dixon, also in Mexico, he got in at 74.8% of the vote. And then CM Punk got in at 65.5% of the vote in the modern US and Canada, followed by Cody Rhodes at 64.4%. Sabu comes in at 64.1%. And then rounding out our nominees, our elected people for the Observer Hall of Fame for 2025 is Bobby Bruns, who representing Japan and I believe is part of the historical as well, if I'm not mistaken. I know he's representing Japan, but he's more of a historical figure in terms of his contributions to the business of the 1950s, and so he gets in at 62.7%. Initial reactions to the people that were voted in there, Josiah, and when you saw the names that were revealed by Dave.
Well, I was not surprised about Gran Hamada, and I was not surprised about Cody Rhodes and CM Punk. Those all seem kind of like obvious choices that they would go in this year after what happened last year. I suspected that some of the vote was divided last year about especially around Punk and Cody. As for the other ones, Spirios Orion, I didn't know who he was, and so I actually, in retrospect, have done some research on him, and he was pretty significant. So I'm pretty happy with the overall class that went in. It seems like everyone that went in should be there. There are obviously some other ones who I believe should go in eventually that did not make it this time. But as it goes right now, it's a pretty good class, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of names here that I think when we talked about it last episode, like you mentioned, in terms of the modern US and Canada, the only thing that kind of surprised me, not necessarily that they got in, it was more that Punk got more of the vote share than Cody Rhodes did. Was a little
that
surprising
surprised
for me.
Me too.
That was a little surprising for me because I figured both would get in, especially Punk. I think the tide has kind of turned from last year on CM Punk and how people kind of viewed him. And again, I'm not gonna like beat it to death. I think it's been discussed a lot, but obviously the thing that was going against him, I think, was everything that happened at the latter part of his time in AEW, whether it be Brawl Out and then the attack on Jack Perry and everything in between there. But I think the tide had kind of turned on Punk once he got to WWE, and he continued to move some business on his arrival over there. But I thought Cody Rhodes was still like that big star, and you look at his contributions even from leaving the WWE and doing a lot of stuff on the independents and launching the launch of All In as well, the large independent event that ultimately leads to AEW and him being really one of the building blocks of the second biggest company in the world, arguably, in All Elite Wrestling, and then going to WWE and being a big part of their boom period. I thought it would be a little bit more of a resounding yes vote for Cody Rhodes this time around, but Punk's still getting a little bit more of the vote share percentage was a little surprising for me. And I'm not saying it was like this dominant, like 75% to 65%. It's, within a percentage point, but still it was kind of interesting how Punk got a little bit more of the vote share.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too, because I think out of the two, the most slam dunk case is Cody. Punk's case is just not as strong as Cody's, but I still think both of them should be there.
Yeah.
But when you look at what Cody has done, from helping when he left WWE to when he went to Ring of Honor and helping kind of set Ring of Honor on fire. It wasn't just him; it was the Young Bucks and the Bullet Club in general, and all of that really did that. Leading to All In, which it's funny because it was the largest independent show of all time, but it was really a Ring of Honor and New Japan show primarily, because that was the primary talent in it, with a few AAA guys showing up, including Rey Mysterio, oddly enough.
Yep.
But it was really funded and produced by Ring of Honor, and they owned the rights to the show and all that. I think then you look into what he did from there on, with the founding of AEW and making AEW a major competitor, and him being a legitimate top draw in AEW, proving that he could be a top draw at a national level, and then going to back to WWE to be the top babyface pretty much from day one when he walked in, although that injury didn't help him early on.
Yep.
But I mean, the way he went out with the injury after that match with Seth Rollins while he was injured, that put him over the top as the guy who was in waiting to be the top babyface. And now we see 2 or 3 years, 3 years ish of Cody being the top guy in WWE, and I'm pretty sure that was a an open and shut case for him.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that it was a good. I'm glad that both of them went in. I'm a little bit, like I said, a little surprised about Punk being a little bit more share of the votes. But nonetheless, it doesn't really matter what the share of the vote is as long as you reach that threshold.
Yep. And that's what they were able to do and get in. And so that puts them in the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. Another person in the modern U.S. Canada that we talked about last episode, Sabu, getting in on his return to the ballot for the first time. And it was at a 64%, 64.1% voting share that got him into the Observer Hall of Fame. I figured that there would be a lot of a push for Sabu as people kind of look back on his career and realize just how the things that he did from an influence standpoint in terms of, bringing tables to the ring and table breaking and all that. And even just some of the stuff he was able to do in the 90s in terms of just the level of popularity he reached for a guy who didn't wrestle for a major promotion before ECW started. I think you look at all of that together, I think you just see it all kind of coming together, getting this big push. And so his first year returning onto the ballot, he gets in to the Observer Hall of Fame in his first year.
Yeah, and it really shouldn't be understated how popular this guy was in the mid '90s. Like I remember buying wrestling magazines in one of my local stores in rural Nova Scotia, and they would cover the main three promotions: WWF, WCW, and ECW. And ECW was such a strange thing to cover, but they highlighted. Who do they highlight from there? Taz and Sabu.
Yep.
And so I was aware of Taz and Sabu, for a while there. The first time I saw him, I think I said in the last podcast, was on that when ECW invaded Monday Night Raw.
Right.
But you look at how popular this guy was, and I mean, the three names you associate with ECW the most are probably Sabu, Rob Van Dam, and Taz. And there are others, but those are the three big ones. And then you consider all the people that came through there and all the hardcore wrestling that became prominent, and even some of the junior style, the high flying style, it was popularized through the luchadors and WCW and whatnot as well. But Sabu was doing that stuff back in 1993 in ECW before the luchadors even arrived. Not as well as the luchadors, but
right.
He was doing it. And to say that he is influential would probably be an understatement on how many wrestlers who watched him thought he was extremely important towards why they do what they do.
For sure. And so it's good to see him get in on his return to the ballots and the influence vote, and more people kind of looking back on his run in professional wrestling. I'll quickly touch on Gran Hamada and Darrell Dixon. We talked about Gran Hamada a bit on the last episode, but if you just go back and you watch him, you see the matches. I after we did our episode, I was like, all right, I'm going to watch my Gran Hamada tapes. And you just kind of see, like, he was so ahead of his time, really.
That's the right word right there.
It's so ahead of his time. Like, you just look at that stuff and you could just transplant him into modern day wrestling and he would fit in so well in the modern day. Like, some of the matches he was having there in terms of his movement and the moves that he was performing, it was very unique. And we touched on it last episode, some of the people that he trained, but he also trained Super Delphin. He trained the great Sasuke. Keep that name in the back pocket for later on this Observer
Indeed.
Hall of Fame episode. But Gran Hamada is, I think more and more people are kind of going back and watching his tapes and realizing this is a guy that's had a strong influence to what we see in professional wrestling today in the ring.
Well, he was one of the first guys to introduce the luchador style to Japanese juniors. And so, you think about influential guys in that sphere, you think of like Jushin Thunder Liger, you think of Tiger Mask, and other things like that. And Hamada's right there with them, including the fact that he's trained some of those guys.
Yeah.
Training Ultimo Dragon, Great Sasuke, as you mentioned, who is another level of insane that we can talk about some other time. But these guys are all heavily influenced by Hamada. And if you watch his work, like you said, he was way ahead of his time, way, way, way ahead of his time. and a lot of it really still holds up. You can't say that about everyone, and he's one of the guys you can.
Yeah, for sure. And then Darrell Dixon is a very interesting case. You kind of look into his career and how he was able to get popular in Mexico, and being able to do it as a black man as well in Mexico to be a top star, and wrestle across. He also did some tours, I should say, in the United States as well. If I recall, he also main evented a Madison Square Garden event against Buddy Rogers for
Yes.
the World Heavyweight Championship there for the WWF at that time. And so, well traveled, but really got himself quite big in the 50s with EMLL and wrestling some of the top names there and becoming a prominent figure, and still alive today, 91 years old, Darrell Dixon.
Yes, indeed.
So it's he's a very cool case, somebody that, like, and that's why I really like these observer look backs in terms of the Hall of Fame, because you can go back and look at these names and realize, oh, this guy kind of might have been lost to time a little bit, but he's got quite the interesting career.
Yeah, and it's amazing that like he debuted for Salvador Luderoth's promotion EMLL, which later became CMLL,
Yep.
the oldest active promotion in the world right now. Um, and he did so many different things, going to the WWF to wrestle Buddy Rogers, as you mentioned. He wrestled in World Class before it was World Class. He won the NWA Texas Heavyweight Championship, beating Waldo Von Erich. He's won tag team championships. He wrestled in New Japan. In all of that, he left MLL when they formed the Universal Wrestling Association, which was kind of a big split in Mexican wrestling. And it even mentions here that he wrestled Luthez before. So this guy has really done it all, just all over the world. And like, he ran in Canada. He went to Canada for Vancouver. He worked the Vancouver territory for a bit. And so I think he's an interesting case, and he's a guy I really knew nothing about until I looked into him for the ballot. And it's just an interesting case, and I'm quite glad that guys who are somewhat lost to history are still being honored on this ballot. Like, he definitely earned his place, I think.
For sure. Absolutely. And then the final person that got in that we'll talk about here, Bobby Bruns, who's he was a wrestler beforehand too, but I think the reason why he was able to get in is because he was super influential into helping the creation of Japanese pro wrestling, specifically by booking Ricky Dozan and essentially getting the ball rolling for Ricky Dozan being a huge star in Japan.
Yes, and he was also a part of the, if I recall correctly, a part of the precursor to the NWA.
Yep.
Which was the Midwest Wrestling Association. And he held their World Heavyweight Championship, which again was a successor to the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Or not a successor, a predecessor.
Predecessor, yeah.
And this guy came around before guys like Ed Strangler Lewis, just to put it in perspective. So he's an interesting case. And then he actually did win the title more than once in that time frame, winning it in 1940 and again in 1948. Playing a role with Ricky Dozan and all that is like, that's pretty important, because if you're feuding with Ricky Dozan, you started Japanese wrestling. You're a huge part of the start of Japanese wrestling. And as we know, that has become a cultural force in Japan in a way that wrestling isn't here, not in the same way anyways. It's just interesting to me to see a case like his come up. And I really had to learn about him because I never really heard of him before the ballot. And he's a great guy to have in that Hall of Fame, definitely, in terms of influence.
Yeah, he was one of those first American wrestlers. Like, in order to get Ricky Dozan over for a Japanese audience, it was post World War II, and
yes,
and they were highlighting Ricky Dozan, which ironically it came out he was Korean, but the idea at the time was, oh, we have this big Japanese superstar that's beating all these American wrestlers, and he starts to really get a big homegrown popularity, Ricky Dozan, back in Japan from working in the Hawaii territory that western part of the United States and beating some of these American wrestlers, that it helps get Ricky Dozan when he comes back to Japan to be this huge star. And
then he would bring in the guys he beat to come feud with him in Japan.
That's right.
Because they're here to get revenge, and then he beats the American heel.
Yep.
It's classic pro wrestling, and it worked.
Yep, it absolutely worked, and a lot of those American wrestlers as well would happily take the loss, because one, they were getting paid a lot of money during that time, because that was a big boom period. And we know a thing or two about pro wrestling is that the money is what makes it go around in pro wrestling. But also, too, like, word wouldn't get back to the United States as easily if an American wrestler had lost, like a Lou Thez, for example. So it made it a lot more easier for them to go to Japan, take the loss, make a lot of money, and they knew that taking the loss would be good for business, because that would just, help put over the babyface in Ricky Dozan. So all that comes back to Bobby Bruns in terms of being able to push him and realizing the potential to have this big Japanese superstar when he was booking and wrestling in Hawaii, and the word was getting back to Japan. That really kind of kickstarted things. And so I think that's mainly why you see Bobby Bruns getting into the Hall of Fame this year, is because of that influence that really helped catapult Japanese wrestling to where it is now, where it is still such a big, maybe not as a peak in terms of pop culture or anything like that in Japan nowadays, but certainly in the culture and a lot of wrestling promotions in Japan, and constantly touring promotions in Tokyo. So a lot of that kind of goes back to Bobby Bruns to helping kind of catapult that. So it was cool to see him get into the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame.
And I read something earlier today when I was doing some more research on Bruns, and I found someone like just recapping his career. But it's abundantly clear that they were getting some of their news from like maybe some newspapers from the era and stuff like that. Because it says Bruns unsuccessfully challenged world champion Everett Marshall at the Public Hall in Cleveland, Ohio. And so I'm on Wikipedia right now, but I did read this elsewhere.
Yeah.
The match ended in 44 minutes and 48 seconds when Bruns was laid out and unable to recover. And then the article I saw said he may have had a spinal injury, and it took him 10 minutes to get up and get out of the ring. And I'm like, work.
That is some classic pro wrestling right there.
And I was like, the old work is still working, people.
So good. God, I wish we could see some of that today still in pro wrestling.
I mean, like it's going to be so basic compared to what we see now, but I love the idea that he took a move and he couldn't continue. The match ended when he couldn't continue, and he laid in the ring for 10 minutes selling a back injury.
Oh, incredible.
It's just awesome.
I love that.
It's so great.
So that is those are the people that were inducted into this year's Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. Let's look at the people that were close. They were almost there. They were in the 50% category. I'm going to go from the bottom all the way to the top in terms of the percentages in this case. Starting at the bottom, making his return to the ballot, Gorilla Monsoon. He got 51.7% of the vote. And so he was close this year. He's probably going to be somebody that's going to continue to linger around. After that, it's Kevin and Kerry and David Von Erich at 53.4%. After that, it is Ted Turner at 55.5%. Jose Torres comes in at 57.3%. Jesse Ventura, I think this is his debut as a non-wrestler in the non-wrestler category, Jesse Ventura. I know he was on the ballot before, but I thought maybe he was in as a wrestler. But I know for certain this is return to the ballot anyway. 57.4% in his return to the ballot. So he's somebody that we'll keep an eye on the bubble for next year. June Byers coming in at 57.6%. And then the real close ones here were Junkyard Dog coming in at 58.6%. He was 4 votes away from the threshold for his region of U.S. Canada Historical. He came in at 239 votes. He needed 4 more votes, 243 votes to get in. And then Hayabusa is the one that we have been hearing a lot, Josiah, in terms of a name that needs to get into the Hall of Fame. He was also 4 votes short in the Japan region, coming in at 58.9%. So those are the names in the 50% category. is there any names here that kind of stand out for you that in that 50% category that you're kind of keeping an eye on? Any surprises, that sort of deal?
I'm not really surprised by any of the ones that came close there. Um, I hope Hayabusa gets in eventually. Out of that whole group, really, there's a fair few in there that can go. They should get in eventually. Jesse Ventura, there's a real case to be made for that. Um, yeah, I don't think there was any. I think what kept some of them back was that the fact that there was just better candidates this year.
Yep.
Now, where we end up next year is going to be interesting because I think some of the better candidates now are inducted. That's going to clear room for some of these guys who could move up, I think.
Yeah, that will be interesting in terms of like what some of these newer names will bring in. We'll talk about those newer names in a moment, but it's certainly like, especially look at the case of the Hayabusa, Junkyard Dog, a June Byers, and even a Jesse Ventura, Jose Torres, I guess, as well in that 57%. Those are definitely strong candidates to be able to get in next year. Just considering how close they were.
Close.
Yeah, they're very, very close, especially Hayabusa and Junkyard Dog. Yeah, we've talked extensively about Junkyard Dog, so I won't go too much into it, but he's somebody that continues to be hovering around and gaining a lot of support and momentum. Ted Turner is interesting at 55.5%. I could see him getting the push up and eventually getting in. I'm looking through the percentages. He didn't get a lot from the retired wrestlers in terms of his percentages, which I think kind of held him back. So, because for those that may not be aware, before we kind of get into the Ted Turner stuff, Dave kind of put down, there's 4 different categories of voters. So there's reporters, there's historians, there's active professionals, and retired professionals that vote in the Hall of Fame. I believe you're a historian, right? I believe that's what you're marked as.
I think so.
So you're either a reporter or a historian, unless you have an active professional wrestling career that I'm not aware of, Josiah.
I do not. So I'm going to assume that I'm under the historian category.
Yeah.
Although I have like covered some of wrestling before with the Daily DDT and that.
Right.
And even with I did a few articles for Voices of Wrestling in the past as well.
So there you go. But nonetheless, it was interesting. Just some of the percentages. Again, Ted Turner not getting a huge amount of the vote. It was really some of the reporters, the historians, and even a little bit to an extent the active wrestlers. But even then, the active wrestlers, they had Ted Turner at 30. So really, it was more the reporters and the historians that really kind of shot up Ted Turner here. In terms of the rankings, Ted Turner coming in 8th with reporters, and then in terms of the historians, as I'm looking through here, he comes in at 14th with the historians. So
yeah.
So a big push between those two.
I think the reason why he doesn't do as well with wrestlers, active and retired, is because he never really was in the wrestling business other than owning WCW.
Yeah.
And he was very hands off. Where in terms of from the reporting and from the historical side, there is very little national wrestling without him. A lot of people don't realize that, his superstation TBS was the first to air national wrestling across the United States. And it took some of these territories and broadcasted them across the entire country. And this is back in the 70s.
That's right.
This is before he bought Jim Crockett Promotions and turned it into WCW. This is before Vince McMahon Jr. was on the scene and took it national. Would the USA Network have given a look at wrestling the way it has if it wasn't for Ted Turner getting wrestling to be one of the first television mega hits? Because that was one of the highest rated shows on all of television, period, when Ted Turner started his Superstation.
Yeah, it is one of those questions that you ask in terms of like, because while he was hands off, without his influence, like there's in terms of what he was able to do, obviously running WCW and whatnot, like wrestling history is totally different if he doesn't come in, and some of the support he gave to professional wrestling when he was launching the Superstation back in the 70s. Like, it was the Braves, it was the Atlanta Braves, and it was professional wrestling and CNN that kind of helped launch Ted Turner into where he is today. So yeah, it really is kind of an interesting deal, and I think that's why you see more of the reporters and the historians kind of look at it like you mentioned, as opposed to more of the active and the retired professional wrestlers that kind of stay away from that and don't really kind of vote him in from that aspect. So
and I mean, it's a different era now, but wrestling's still on TBS.
Yep.
All these years later.
Yep.
And it's that brief period of time, the 20 years with the death of WCW, to AEW starting and being on Turner, TNT, and TBS. It's just interesting to me that was kind of a return to form for them, because those two channels have really always been associated with pro wrestling because of Ted Turner, especially TBS.
Yeah.
And now, the number one program on TBS and TNT is AEW, Dynamite, and Collision.
Yep.
And other than, basketball or whatever, sports.
Other than the sports programming, yes. But in terms of original programming, if you don't include professional wrestling in the sports programming, then yes, it would certainly be number one based on the television ratings.
Yeah, and historically, that's been true for that channel.
Yep.
You're going back to WCW and the monster ratings they would get for Nitro on TNT. WCW Saturday Night did really great. One of the common myths that Eric Bischoff tells is that WCW, was this, small regional promotion that he took national. Well, no, WCW Saturday Night frequently beat Raw in the ratings before Nitro.
Yes. Yes,
that was fairly commonplace.
The main issue with WCW is just had trouble making money. That was the big thing with WCW during that time.
That was the biggest thing. And to Bischoff's credit, he did turn that around in 1994.
For sure.
But you look at WCW, even the 80s and 90s, WCW Saturday Night, NWA Championship Wrestling, whatever the show was called, doesn't matter, World Championship Wrestling, because that was his name at one point.
Mm-hmm.
That show was on that network because of Ted Turner, the World Championship Wrestling show, and various promotions represented it before it became its own promotion, from Georgia Championship Wrestling to a brief stint with the WWF to what became WCW when Jim Crockett Promotions took it over. And that show consistently outdrew, in terms of ratings, everything the WWF did.
Yeah.
And by the 90s, it was back and forth, especially once Raw started. But there were many weeks where WCW Saturday Night was a higher ratings draw than Monday Night Raw.
Yep. So you can look at the numbers on that one and see that for yourself. But it's that during that time was just a matter of how can we make money and how can we turn those television viewers into people that would go in and pay at the arena, because they were having a lot of trouble at that time getting people into the buildings themselves for WCW shows. So especially like 93 to 95 before Hogan came in, that was a kind of a tough stretch in terms of trying to get people into the building at WCW.
And really, that was a tough time for WCW. Once Bill Watts was out and it was Kevin Sullivan booking with Ric Flair.
Yep. And that whole committee there in WCW.
Yeah, so 93 actually ended up being an okay year business-wise. It wasn't great, but they had Vader as champion, and they had Ric Flair and Sting as the top baby faces at that point, because Flair returned to WCW.
Yep.
And then you have Flair's journey to the gold in 93 at Starrcade when he beat Vader for it. And that match was awesome. I mean, for its time.
Yeah.
And it was proof that the management that hated Ric Flair 2 years before were wrong.
Yeah.
And Ric Flair was still the number one draw in that company.
Yeah. You mean to tell me that changing him to Spartacus is not exactly a great idea?
It is not.
Wow. It's unbelievable.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, there's a lot of things you could go back into in the early 90s of WCW and some of the missed opportunities. I also think of the Hollywood Blondes as well. Some of the missed opportunities there with Steve Austin and Brian Pillman. But
well, and that feud with Vader is interesting because it was originally meant to be Sid.
Yep. Yeah.
Against Sid against Vader, and Sid got himself into trouble by trying to murder Arn Anderson.
Yes. The scissors
And that's
incident.
not an exaggeration. He was trying to murder Arn Anderson.
Yeah, it was the scissors incident there with Arn Anderson that led to Sid's ouster in the company.
And then the WWF brings him in a year and a half later as Psycho Sid because he tried to kill Arn Anderson.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, wrestling.
Professional wrestling. It is a very weird business. It's a very, very weird business.
Only when attempted murder can actually be worked into your gimmick.
Yeah. Like, oh, we could sell some tickets off of this. Yeah. And then Bischoff brought it up in a promo in WCW later on in 2000 when they stripped the belts.
No reaction.
Got no reaction. It's like trying to bring it up 6 or 7 years after that incident. And you're like, geez.
And by that point, Arn and Sid had buried the hatchet and been working in WCW together for like 2 years.
Yep. What's wrong, Sid? Get your scissors? And then no reaction. Just
silence.
Yeah.
The scissors, Sid? The scissors?
Yeah. And then Mark Madden going, whoa! I can't believe he said that. It's just
work shoots suck, man.
Oh, they're awful. But that is for a different time. There's so much we could get into with WCW, but all that to say, Ted Turner is certainly somebody that's going to be kind of kept at the forefront here heading into next year's balloting. I'll talk about some of the biggest movers and the biggest, I don't want to say losers, but certainly did not lost their voting share, let's just say, for this year. In terms of the biggest gains, the biggest gain coming for Zack Sabre Jr. from 16.3% a year before to 49.7% this year. Pretty big gain for Zack Sabre Jr. That he's just under 50%. He's at 49.7%, but certainly somebody to keep an eye on to eventually move their way up. As I think his catalog of matches, I think a lot of people, myself included, I think we're kind of looking very critically in terms of his, he had just gotten the IWGP championship last year, and like, oh, can he be a draw or whatnot? Forgetting that this guy has an incredible catalog of matches already behind him before he got that IWGP title. So I think the in-ring case is so strong for Zack Sabre Jr. Yeah. I think he's got the strongest in-ring catalog case out of a lot of the wrestlers here on this ballot.
Well, he still is. I mean, he's only 38.
Yeah.
And he's been wrestling for like 20 years. And he's had this, like, he doesn't look 38, so that helps. But he's still like in great physical shape. He's not beat up at all. This is a guy who's going to be wrestling for a long time, provided injuries stay away. And he is the top foreigner in Japan. They were looking for their successor to Kenny Omega, and then they found it in Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay and Jay White together.
Yep.
And then both of them were gone. It's like, who do you go with? And David Finlay was attempted for a time, but really everyone kind of knew it was going to be Zack Sabre Jr. because he's the guy that wrestles at that level that the Japanese audience appreciates. Because you have to be one of the best to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy is a draw for New Japan. There's no question. And he likes it there. Like, he doesn't want to leave.
Yeah.
Which I think is a feather in his cap, although it might hurt his... People will say, oh, well, he wasn't in AEW or WWE, so he's not going to get as many votes. But honestly, do you really need to go to AEW and WWE to be a Hall of Famer these days?
No,
of course not. As long as your career is good, and he's had a tremendously long career in New Japan now. He's been there for, I think, 10 to 12 years.
Yeah.
Off and on. He had a pretty good run in Noah before that as well. He lives in Japan now. He loves working New Japan, and I don't see him leaving there anytime soon, because he could get paid more, but money isn't everything for everybody.
Yep.
And he's a guy that he can work AEW a few times a year if they need him. He can work the whatever he wants to on the indies. He just kind of do whatever he wants and live comfortably in Japan. Good for him.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely going to go in eventually. In terms of from his in-ring standard, I think he's more than qualified. Um, when you consider how many times he's won the Bryan Danielson Technical Wrestler Award
Yep.
From voters, it's him and Bryan Danielson. That's
Yeah,
it, really.
Pretty much. And Danielson's in the Observer Hall of Fame, right? So
Right. And if Danielson, he's not as big as draw as Danielson was, to be fair.
Yep.
But if you go by in-ring standards, him and Danielson are right next to each other in terms of ability.
Yep.
And he can hang with the best of them. Like we've seen him wrestle guys like Kenny Omega and whatnot, and they're just outstanding matches.
Yeah.
He's had like tremendous matches with Okada and Tanahashi and Naito. And I remember I saw him live in New York against it was against Tanahashi, I think, or maybe it was Naito. But anyways, regardless, it was just a fantastic technical affair that ended in a submission. And Sabre came out as like, I was watching it and thinking, this guy's gonna be one of their future aces.
Yeah.
And he is.
Yep.
He's going to prove to be a very good rival for whoever is the IWGP champion coming out of the Tokyo Dome, whether it be Yota Tsuji or Konosuke Takeshita. So, man, him and Takeshita is a match I'd like to see again.
Yeah, absolutely. That would certainly be an interesting match. So, yeah, Zack Sabre Jr. gained a big increase into this year. Another guy that got a big increase was a guy you voted for in your ballot is Otto Wanz, who got in at didn't get in, but he got an increase of from 24.9% the year before to 41.3%. So a big increase for Otto Wanz. We talked about him on the previous episode there. So if you want to listen to some Otto Wanz talk, you can listen back to that. Some other interesting increases: Matt and Jeff Hardy coming from 23.4% to 35.6%. Samoa Joe getting a pretty big increase, 23.2% the year before to 36.5%. So some growing momentum there for those two. Let's go to some of the biggest decreases here and people that got a big drop. And the biggest one that I took note of was Ole Anderson this year. He went from 40.2% the year before to 26.7% this year. I imagine that, did Ole Anderson pass away last year?
Let me look it up.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if it's like, there's the thing in the Observer Hall of Fame with the death bump, right? So I'm wondering if, like, with the death bump, he got a big percentage increase last year, and then this year, out of that, I think that might account for his massive drop. Because plus you add on to the fact, as we mentioned in the last episode, that he was not exactly the friendliest person to deal with in professional wrestling, and I think you add all that together, it's going to be a tough road for Ole Anderson up ahead.
Yeah, he died in February 26th, 2024.
You're right. So yeah, I think that's the death bump there from the year earlier. So might be a tough road for Ole for upcoming years. We'll see. Crazier things have happened in the Observer Hall of Fame. So we've seen guys that go from like 18% to in the next year. We saw that with Chima last year. So it's possible for him to get an increase, but tough road ahead for Ole Anderson. Another person that got a big drop was the Royal brothers, Royal and Faulkner. They went from 41.1% to 26.1% in the rest of the world category. Another one that I'm kind of surprised got a big drop was Manami Toyota and Toshio Yamada, who dropped from 42.6% to 33.8%. I'm surprised about that drop.
I think what hurt them the most was Io Shirai being on the ballot this year. Because when you see the Japanese ballot, you're going to kind of prioritize who do you pick out of those two groups. And I think Io Shirai did something around 30%. And I suspect some of the votes that would have otherwise gone to Manami Toyota and her tag partner there.
Yep, Toshio Yamada.
Thank you, Yamada.
Yeah.
My brain just died for a minute. So Toyota and Yamada, I think some of the votes that otherwise would have went to them went to Io Shirai.
Yeah. Io Shirai,
for Joshi fans, right?
Yeah, for sure. Io Shirai getting 23.9% of the vote in Japan this year in her debut on the ballot. So I imagine that aided to some of the votes there for Toyota and Yamada. Oh, go ahead.
And Shirai is only going to go up from here.
Yep.
Like, she's still building her case. She's still young. She's only 35.
Yep.
And she's certainly not in any danger of stopping wrestling anytime soon. So,
no, for sure. I think there's going to be a growing case for her for sure. Another person that experienced a drop, and this brings a tear to my eye, but I'm also not surprised. Yoshihiro Takayama going from 30.1% to 21.3% from for today. So kind of sad on that drop, but I'm also not surprised about that drop either.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I'm sad about it. And I say that as someone who did not vote for him.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I couldn't vote for him this time around because of the candidates that we had. And to be fair, I'm not even sure if Takayama is going to be a Hall of Fame candidate. But you look at his story, and how can you not feel for the guy and just want to see him get some sort of recognition for literally sacrificing his body.
Yeah,
literally, like quite literally, like the guy's in a wheelchair now.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Just crazy times for sure. So let's look at the people that are on the brink of dropping off the ballot. They were just able to get in. You had to get less than 10% of the votes to be dropped off the ballot. I'll go from 12% down. Bullet Bob Armstrong came in at 12%. He had 17.3% the year before. A guy you voted for, Archie Mongolian Stomper Goldie, also coming in at 12%. Now he bumped up from 10.6% from the year before. So he's still surviving into this ballot. Bill Dundee at 11.1%. Sweet Daddy Siki, a guy I want to learn a little bit more about. He's in right at 11%. And then hovering around that 10%, and that was just able to get in for next year. Mercedes Moné at 10.9%, which was the biggest shocker for me, if I'm being honest, that it was that low for Mercedes Moné. I thought she would be hovering around the 20 to 25%, but she comes in at 10.9% in her debut on the ballot. And so
that was extremely surprising to me.
Yeah, very low. I was shocked about that. Less than Becky Lynch. I thought it would be around the Becky Lynch mark for sure.
I agree. I thought her, Becky Lynch, and Io Shirai would all be around the same mark.
Yeah.
And they were not.
No.
So I'm quite surprised by that.
Yeah. Trish Stratus able to survive another year from 10.9% last year to 10.5% this year. Again, tough sledding though for Trish. Steve Gray in his debut in the ballot, 10.1%. And then right at 10% and saving themselves for next year, Seth Rollins at 10% and Pampero Firpo at 10% as well after having 16.5% the year before. So it's going to be tough for them for next year to try and get any sort of momentum and try and build themselves up. But those are your names that are kind of surviving right now into next year. Any of those names that kind of stick out to you on what quickly talk about, or you want to move on to the next stage?
Well, Pampero Firpo, like a lot of people don't know a lot about him, and I think that's probably why he's not getting those kinds of votes. But he's the reason Macho Man was Macho Man.
Mm.
You know, he's the guy that debuted the "Ooh yeah." You know, he would do that, and the voice, Randy Savage got it from him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a much bigger star back in the Territory era before the Rogue promotions with the Poffos and all that. Yeah, because Randy Savage wasn't his father's promotion was not a part of the NWA, so a Rogue promotion, that's what they were called.
Yeah. Outlaw for that some people like to use as well. Outlaw promotion.
Outlaw promotion, yes. And Randy Savage grew up, and one of the guys he watched was Pampero Firpo. And he would imitate it, and he adapted it into his Randy Savage character. So the iconic Macho Man Randy Savage voice, which I cannot imitate.
Yes, very tough to imitate.
Is very much so inspired directly by him. And so it's funny because Dave Meltzer would tell stories about when he was a kid in the playground, and all of them would be doing the ooh yeah. And it was because of Pampero. So I think there's a real case there to be made. Not only was he a good wrestler, but he went on to influence what is arguably one of the greatest wrestlers of all time in Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah, for sure. So right at 10%. We'll see how he does for next year, but not looking good for Pampero Firpo or Seth Rollins at 10%. So there was a part of me that was hoping Seth Rollins would be off of this ballot, because that would have been the third straight time that he would return the ballot and then he would be off the ballot. So there was a part of me that was kind of hoping for that third time's the charm deal, but nonetheless, he's just hanging on for next year. The people that did get less than 10% of the votes and are dropped from next year's ballot include the tag team of Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch. FTR getting dropped this year after debuting on the ballot. Drew McIntyre also dropped from the ballot. Los Infernales, which is the trio of El Satanico, Parata Morgan, and MS1. Les Kellett and Bill Mercer all getting dropped from the ballot. Any notable names for you in this bunch that dropped from the ballot?
I'm surprised FTR dropped off.
Yep.
They'll be back. They'll be back eventually.
I agree.
Especially since their career's not done yet.
Yep.
I suspect when they hang up their boots, Dave will add them back to the ballot. And we'll see by that time, I should say. Yeah, that was the most surprising one for me. Seth Rollins dropping off would be like, that poor guy. He can't seem to catch a break. I don't know if I'd vote for him, but I do think that there's a place for him on the ballot. I'm kind of surprised by how little votes he got, but also you're in the same category as guys like Cody Rhodes and CM Punk, who are quite obviously ahead.
Yes.
And Rollins is still building his case with his career. And I have a feeling that his career is going to be a lot like Edge and Randy Orton, where he's always been one of those top guys in that position, but never the guy.
Yeah.
And that might work against him.
Yeah. I agree with that analysis for sure. Because I don't see those guys as Hall of Famers either. So, but that's for next year. We'll discuss all that for next year. Who will be dropped next year if they're not getting at least 50% of the vote because of the time spent on the ballot? Would be June Byers, Dominic DeNucci, and Killer Carl Cox. So if they don't get 50% of the vote next year, they'll be dropped, because after 15 years, if you're not moving at a certain pace, Dave will have to look at dropping you from the ballot if you don't get a certain percentage. With June Byers, I'm not concerned about that. Dominic DeNucci and Killer Carl Cox, we'll see with those two. And to kind of wrap up our coverage of the Observer results, some names that have been added to next year's ballot. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on these names. I'll go through them here. Kenta will be making his debut on the ballot. I'm fascinated to hear some of the analysis on Kenta. Dave Bautista as well, somebody that's going to be added to next year's ballot. I think there's an interesting case for him there. Great Sasuke, who we mentioned earlier. He has been added to the ballot. Kane has been added. Tam Nakano, Tibor Zakax, Colosso Colasetti, Andreas Lambrakis. I believe those will be in the rest of the world category, because I have no idea who those three names are. But I will do my best to try and research them. Booker T has been added into the ballot for next year. I believe this will be his debut on the ballot. Dick Murdoch not getting in the tag team with Dusty Rhodes, so he's going to try on his own next year. That'd be a solo wrestler. We'll see how he does for next year. Kyoko Inoue will be in the ballot next year. Gunter.
That's an interesting case.
Yeah, Inoue, part of the All Japan Women's Wrestling of the 90s. Part of that era with Manami Toyota and Bull Nakano. That'll be an interesting case for sure. Gunter has been added to the ballot for next year. Los Espantos and Le Petit Prince will be added to next year's ballot. So some of these names, I will be fully upfront with you all. I have no idea who some of these names are. But I do know who some of these other names are in cases of Kenta, Dave Bautista, Great Sasuke, Kane, Booker T, Dick Murdoch, Gunter, Kyoko Inoue. So some interesting names added to next year's ballot. Your initial reactions to some of these names here, Josiah?
My initial reaction, if we look at the era that he drew in, I would say probably yes to Batista. Kenta, for me, again, I'm a Japanese wrestling mark, so Kenta's an automatic yes for me.
Yep.
But his case is interesting because he was always in the secondary promotion. Although his run in New Japan was not bad once he left WWE. But now he went back to Noah and he's solidifying his case there as one of the top guys there. Although he did drop the GHC title.
Yep.
But yeah, so those two are the most interesting names, Dave Bautista and Kenta, for me.
Mm-hmm.
A few of them, I can already say I'm not going to vote for Kane.
What? You mean to tell me Kane is not a Wrestling Observer Hall of Famer?
I don't think so.
What?
I don't think so.
Oh, no.
Now,
I totally agree with you, just for the record.
I could tell. And I think some people will probably give him a vote just based on longevity, significance of his character, pretty memorable feuds, at least in the 90s. I mean, well, obviously, his one memorable feud is with The Undertaker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I don't see him getting any serious votes. I think those are the ones that stand out to me the most. There are others that I don't know, that I'll have to do some research on to find out more about them. But yeah, I think the Kenta case is going to be really interesting because we have a year now to make the case for him, and Kenta's a guy I'd like to see go in. Yeah. If his mentors are in there, I think he should be in there because he's just as good as them. But then you'd have to make the case for Marufuji as well if Marufuji's not in.
Yeah, and I believe Marufuji was on the ballot beforehand and he didn't get enough votes.
Correct. And I think if Kenta goes in or gets enough votes, it's going to open up the possibility for Marufuji to be brought back in to do that as well. Because Kenta and Marufuji are two sides of the same coin and tremendous workers. Even to this day, they're not what they were, but they can still go.
Yep.
And I think there's a real argument to be made for the two of them for their significance to Pro Wrestling Noah, especially. That is where their primary work has been, although they did a lot of work in All Japan and New Japan as well. But their home promotion is still Noah. And with Noah being the number 2 promotion in Japan now and pretty solidly in that position, that they don't seem to be giving it up anytime soon. And they're doing good. Not as good as New Japan, but they're doing good by Noah standards. And Kenta's a part of that right now. There's an argument to be made, I think.
Yeah, Kenta's a very interesting case because in my mind, I look at it from an in-ring aspect for Kenta and his peak years being in Noah. I don't think there's much of a case from his WWE run.
No.
And even to an extent, his New Japan run, because he was never really a guy in New Japan. Like he was somebody that you could rely on to be in the middle of the card, but he was never like a top. Certainly not where he was in Pro Wrestling Noah, comparatively speaking.
No, and since he's gone back to Noah, he's actually had really great matches.
Yeah.
So it's like just going home and back into his comfort zone seemed to have done wonders for him.
Yeah, exactly. I do think that the Noah stuff is going to be what puts him over, but the thing that's going to hurt Kenta for next year will be, it was that transition period in Noah at that time where they're trying to move off of the years of Misawa and Kobashi, and they're trying to go for some of the smaller guys, as you mentioned, a Kenta, a Marufuji. They tried other guys as well, and I think that might be tough for some voters because they probably won't be viewed as successes in terms of drawing names. Plus, Noah got into the scandals late in the 2000s after Misawa's death with the Yakuza, and so it's going to be tough for Kenta in terms of a drawing aspect for him. I think his case will be purely in-ring.
In-ring and influence, I would say as well.
And influence to an extent as well, absolutely. Because Kenta, peak Kenta rocks. Like, he is an awesome professional wrestler.
Still one of my... I love how Bryan Danielson laughs about this. It was a match with him, Samoa Joe, and Kenta.
Yep.
In a triple threat. And Kenta slaps him so hard that he has trouble hearing in one of his ears now.
Jeez. Yeah.
And Bryan Danielson says this with joy.
Because he's a professional wrestler and he's crazy.
and he's a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that match with Joe and him, it was so awesome.
Yeah.
And I think there was one point in that match though where Kenta got a little too slap happy and Joe KO'd him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. A
but
little receipt
but,
there at the end.
but you know, it was like, like all three guys stiffed the crap out of each other in that match. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. So good. So good. So yeah, like for anybody listening, like there are some Kenta matches online on YouTube and during his time at Pro Wrestling Noah. Specifically, I remember the Kenta versus Kenta Kobashi match as well. That's a really fun match. So that was near the tail end of Kobashi's prime. So I would recommend people go check out that match. But yeah, check out some old Kenta from like 2005 to 2009. And you can make the case too with a guy like Punk and Danielson, where they took his moves to WWE and helped them get popular.
Well, Kenta invented the go to sleep.
Yep.
And
he did the Busaiku knee, which Wheeler Yuta has stolen from Bryan Danielson, who Danielson stole it from Kenta.
Yep.
Kenta, actually, here's an interesting historical note for him. He was the first guy from New Japan to cross over into AEW. He showed up in the pandemic era when they were supposed to not have a relationship.
That's right.
And he got in a fight with Jon Moxley. And that actually was the true start of the New Japan AEW relationship when Kenta showed up, and he's walking out with his Bullet Club shirt on, and Kenny says, "Did Switchblade send you?" He's like, "Tell him I said hi." It was like, that was pretty cool. And that was in the middle of Moxley's feud with Kenny Omega.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was only a matter of time before AEW and New Japan started working together. It was a match made in heaven.
Yep.
And Kenta was the first guy to cross over, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So very interesting case there for Kenta. Another one, Dave Bautista, is going to be an interesting case as well to kind of look back on, because my initial reaction is, yeah, he was one of the bigger stars of the era. And I've grown to appreciate Dave Bautista over the years. I'm not saying he's like an all-star level worker or anything like that, but
not at all.
But for his role and what he was able to put together, I don't think he was as bad as I remember him being at all either. Like, I think he was solid for what he was.
He was a perfectly fine worker.
Yep.
Not great, not exceptional.
Yep.
But what put him over the top as a draw was his charisma.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. I love the entrance too, of course. Like,
of course.
The entrance is great. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and be like a WWE fan and talk about entrances all day long, but I do love the Dave Bautista entrance and the music and the whole presentation of Batista. And I think there will be some things that go against him. I think his return in 2014 will be something that's kind of remembered only because of a recency deal, where, you know, he comes back and he's put in a bad spot where people want Bryan Danielson, but they're adamant in pushing Dave Bautista. And so that could be a little bit of a hindrance for him in terms of like how people kind of view Dave Bautista, but that'll be a case to look at for next year. I think there is certainly a case to look at for him as one of the main pushed acts in WWE. And for some, you know, obviously Cena was number one during that time, but he could easily slot in as a number two guy in WWE. So, that'll be an interesting case for next year. Great Sasuke will be an interesting case just from an in-ring standpoint. Where do people kind of view him on that deal? That'll be interesting. I don't think there's much of a case for like a Booker T or Kane, quite frankly.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, especially Kane. I'm like, I looked at Kane's name as like, really? We're throwing Kane in here? We're going to debate Kane and his Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame candidacy. Booker T, I think, has a better case than Kane, but not by much. He was never really like, the only real time he had a chance to be a top star was in WCW in 1999 and 2000. And
when they were dying.
And the latter point of 2001 when they were dying, as you mentioned. So I don't think the case is very strong there for Booker T. Dick Murdoch was somebody that's kind of hung around for many, many years on the ballot. And I think especially in the modern eyes, when you look at some of his outside of the ring stuff and affiliations, let's just say that, I think will be a tough time for Dick Murdoch to get into the Hall of Fame. And then Gunther will be an interesting case in terms of in-ring. I think like Gunther's like a favorite wrestler of mine to watch, especially at his peak as Walter. But there might be an in-ring case there for Gunther. I'll have to look into it next year. And then Kyoko Inoue is somebody from the All Japan Women's era. Like everybody agrees, it's like in terms of like the top stars of All Japan Women, you got Manami Toyota, you got Bull Nakano,
Lioness Asuka.
Yeah, Aja Khan as well. Yeah, you said Lioness Asuka. So Kyoko Inoue, I think, is somebody that is also kind of associated with those All Japan Women. So that will be interesting to see how she's kind of viewed when we look into this for next year. In terms of some of the names that wrestled for All Japan Women during really the peak of Joshi in the 90s. So an interesting name to look at as well. So a lot of interesting names here added for next year's ballot, but I think that's going to wrap it up here, Josiah, in terms of our look at the 2025 Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame.
Indeed. So before we go, I do need to embarrass you publicly and wish you a happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. Mentioned it on the show as well. I am, I'm turning, I guess now turned 28. So I am getting closer to 30. Yeah, getting closer to 30.
Old man McGibbon over here.
Yeah, just shaking my fists at clouds and asking for wrestling to be back to where it used to be. I really am turning into an old man over here. On the podcast.
Well, it's funny because the era you long for is before your time.
Yes,
so.
that's what going back and watching the tapes are. It's like I'm a very simple man, Josiah. I just want wrestling to be similar to what I saw on the tapes from All Japan in the 90s. Is that really too much to ask? Maybe less head bumps, but I just want some good in-ring wrestling. Yeah, we could get rid of those.
I prefer my simplified storytelling and all of that, and just two people who want to fight.
Yes,
that's when pro wrestling is at its best.
Yeah,
and you tell the story through drama in the ring. I love that.
Yeah, I love when pro wrestling does pro wrestling really well. Personally, but.
I will say we still get flashes of that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah,
with modern wrestling, I find. Especially when you think of the, that 2012 to 2019 era New Japan, really probably even up to 2022, 2023.
Yep.
And you think of actually even Blood and Guts. You look at the story they told with Moxley and Kyle O'Reilly. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So I do love my good pro wrestling, even if it's not always in the style I personally prefer.
Mm-hmm.
More of a technical wrestler guy myself, but I like everything.
Yeah.
Pro wrestling is great. It is the most fun fake sport to watch.
Yes, absolutely. When it's at its best, there's nothing else like it. It's why we stick around and we watch it, because we've seen those peaks, and when it hits those peaks, there really is nothing else like professional wrestling. But then there are moments, there's valleys, and I'm sitting here having to analyze a segment on Raw or something like that and just be like, so you see that promo that was cut? You like the words that were said in this promo? And you're just like, oh God, like just give me some good matches. That's all I ask. But
yes, and I love myself a good promo.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Promo.
Yeah. but it is kind of saddening to me that the storytelling in professional wrestling for some of the modern fans now is told through promos as opposed to the professional wrestling. Like, to me, that just goes against what makes professional wrestling unique and something different that stands out.
I agreed. And I actually had this discussion with a friend, and I said, the promos and all that stuff are important, but if they're not about building to the match, if the match is about building to a promo or an angle, then you kind of miss the point. Yep. Sometimes you can do that, but it shouldn't be what you do for all your stories.
Yeah.
The match should be the primary thing you're building to.
Yeah.
And then because that's where all the action takes place.
Yep.
And then you can build promos out of the match. You can build promos that build up the match as well. All of it's essential and important, but the match is the key thing. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. But,
Yeah. No, I'm sitting here like, yes, that's what I've been saying. You're saying what I'm saying.
I'm preaching the message of good wrestling, right?
Yeah.
But you know, I love pro wrestling when it's at its best. And it's interesting because I just as a reflection, because I've been reflecting on the entire year as I look at the Hall of Fame as well. And my two favorite stories this year, the guy behind probably most of the booking of it was John Moxley.
Yep.
With the feud with Hangman Adam Page and now this Kyle O'Reilly feud.
Yep.
And I'm like, man, Moxley gets it.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Because he's around my age. He's a little bit. We're actually about the same age, him and I. So he's 39. I'm 39. So yeah, we're and I think he has a similar mentality that I had growing up watching it. We watched the same stuff, and it was mostly about building to those matches.
Right. Yeah, it's it really is interesting when you kind of look back and you just see how how it is from now, and that's just like why I like doing these Observer Hall of Fame audio episodes, because it is nice to kind of look back and see how we got here. Some of it good, some of it bad, but it is kind of interesting to see how that progression goes along each year and how the industry is just different now than where it was even 5 years ago, right? Like,
Absolutely.
It's a constantly evolving business. And so I think that's where we're so go ahead.
I was going to say, because it's constantly evolving, that's why wrestling's always interesting.
Yeah.
And if you can, I sound like a guy, like, you know, I prefer the old style, right?
Yep.
But in ring perspective, wrestling is better now than it's ever been in terms of the in ring action.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to love in pro wrestling. And if you're willing to look for it, you can find something you will love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll end it off there, my friend. It was good chatting with you. Thank you again for coming on this year and talk about the Observer Hall of Fame ballot. We'll see if I can get a ballot for next year and talk about this and add a new dynamic about people that I would vote for in the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame.
We can have a little project. We'll make it our mission here, a joint mission.
That's right. We'll see if we could get Dave's attention on this and try and get Observer Hall of Fame ballot. But in the meantime, thank you everybody for that tuned in to the previous bonus audio, this bonus audio as well. It's always fun to talk about the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame and some of the different wrestlers throughout professional wrestling history. Thanks again, Josiah, for coming on. Anything you wanted to plug again before we head out?
Just read my stuff on WrestlingObserver.com, F4WOnline.com, and you can follow me on BlueSky, WR Central.
There you go. Go follow that man. Go read his stuff. We will be back, Lee and I, to talk everything going on in professional wrestling. We'll be talking about Blood and Guts from this past week, a very interesting show that came out from this past week. So looking forward to that conversation. But until then, we'll see you on the next episode.